Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, I'm going to tell you why I think the X100VI is a terrible first camera. I'm pleased to announce the release of my Capture One and Lightroom presets, Metamorphic Portraits, The Sound of Silver, and Rangefinder. These are all available for purchase at my website. Go to kevindealphotography.com or check out a link in the description below. And now, on to today's episode. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. For all of you who are back to this channel, welcome back. And for all of you who are new to Kevin Deal Photography, at the beginning of every episode, I ask for donations to BIG, which is an organization that helps intellectually disabled adults adapt to jobs in the real world. I also want to thank all of you who donate to my Super Thanks link. With those donations, I buy more gear, which I then review on this channel and hopefully help you all with your buying decisions. But to the topic of today's episode. There's a lot of hype about the X100VI still. Over a year after its release, if you go to Facebook Marketplace, these cameras are selling on the used market for more than the $1,599 retail price. The Instagram and TikTokers have hyped this camera big time to the first-time camera buyer. But is it really a wise decision to buy this $1,600 fixed lens camera as your very first big boy or big girl camera? I'm going to tell you from the standpoint of someone with a quarter of a century of experience shooting photography why you shouldn't buy the X100VI as your first camera. Now, let's address the question that many of you will be thinking, which is, if I'm dedicating an entire video to why you shouldn't buy the X100VI, why do I own one? Simple. I know how to run this camera. I understand its limitations and how to work around them, which means I can enjoy it in ways a beginner likely can't. For me, it's a camera of convenience. But if I'm being honest, my Canon R5 Mark II, R5, R8, Fuji GFX 100S, Fuji X-H2, and my Lumix S1R2 are all objectively better cameras than this X100VI for most photographers. I just named 6 models, which means the X100VI ranks as my 7th best camera. Like I said, it's convenient. I use it for things like street photography and vacation photography, where I want high resolution and a small portable body with a very usable focal length. But that's a very specific use case. And because of that, I don't recommend it as a first camera for someone just getting started. Now, let's dive into more reasons why the X100VI is a terrible choice for beginners. The first reason, I don't recommend the X100VI as a beginner camera because of its fixed 23mm focal length. Now, if you're a regular on this channel, you know 23mm is actually my favorite focal length on APS-C, equivalent to 35mm on full frame. I've even made a video explaining why I think 35mm is the king of all normal focal lengths. So why wouldn't I recommend it to beginners? Because to become a well-rounded photographer, you need to shoot with multiple focal lengths. How else will you discover which ones you prefer? The X100VI does offer digital crops to simulate 50 and 70mm, but cropping isn't the same as actually shooting with those focal lengths. You're throwing away pixels and missing out on the true optical characteristics like compression and subject isolation that come with actual lenses at 50 or 70mm. That's why I'd suggest starting with an interchangeable lens camera. On the Fuji platform, that means you can try out focal lengths like 18mm, 23mm, 35mm, 56mm, and so on. You'll gain hands-on experience with how different optics render a scene, and that will make you a more complete photographer. Some argue that a fixed 23mm focal length makes you a better photographer by forcing you to master one perspective, but Couldn't you achieve the same or better results by using a 23mm lens on an interchangeable lens camera? You could shoot exclusively at 23mm for a couple of months, then switch to 35, then 50mm, and so on. That way you're still developing discipline while also gaining experience with a variety of focal lengths. Doesn't that make more sense? If so, doesn't it also make the case that an interchangeable lens system is a better learning tool for beginners? I think so. Another reason I don't recommend the X100VI is the lens. It's decent, but it's far from impressive. When I reviewed the X100VI, I compared it to my 10-year-old 23mm f1.4, which has scratches on both the front and rear elements and has seen a lot of abuse. Even in that condition, it clearly outperformed the fixed 23mm f2 lens on the X100VI. I put that 23mm f1.4 on my XH2, which supposedly has the exact same sensor. I'm not saying the X100VI lens is terrible, but it's definitely not amazing. There's nothing particularly special in it, no secret sauce that enhances my images in any meaningful way. Now, I'm not saying that the X100VI doesn't take beautiful pictures either. I've taken some myself, but the focus of this video is that the X100VI is a poor recommendation for someone who's looking to get into photography. And because the optics on it are nothing special, it's my opinion that you can find a camera with better optics for less money. To the next reason, the autofocus on the X100VI is terrible. I've said it before on this channel. Fuji's biggest weakness across the board is autofocus, but not all Fuji cameras are equal in that regard. On the higher end models like the XH2S or XH2, they have pretty decent and sometimes even good autofocus by Fuji standards, but they still all fall very short of Canon and Sony. Then there's the other end of the spectrum, and when it comes to recent Fuji releases within the last 3 years, the X100VI might have the worst autofocus I've actually used. That's a major problem, especially when the camera is marketed towards street photographers who need to react quickly and capture fleeting moments. In that context, the autofocus isn't just weak, it's a liability. Now, some might say just use manual zone focusing, but that's not a beginner-friendly technique, and since this video is all about why the X100VI is a bad choice for beginners, I don't think just zone focus is a valid counterpoint. If you have to rely on zone focusing right out of the box, that feels like an admission that the autofocusing system just isn't up to the task. And my argument is that the autofocusing is bad. If anything, you're just validating my point by suggesting workarounds. Now, I do think zone focusing is a great technique to learn, but you can do that on any camera. On this camera, you'd be learning it as a workaround to a terrible autofocus system. And finally, let's talk about value because this camera just isn't a good one. Yes, the X100VI retails for $1,600, but that's only if you're actually lucky enough to find one in stock at a retailer. Thanks to the hype machine and Fuji's inability to launch an in-demand product, the real-world price on this is often closer to $2,000 or even more on Facebook Marketplace or eBay. And since it's purchased secondhand, it may even void the warranty. So you're buying a camera above retail with no warranty. And here's the thing. I already don't think this camera is a good value at $1,600. So at $2,000 plus, it's a flat out bad deal, especially for someone who's new to photography. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Kevin, you've made your point. What should a beginner buy instead? I'm glad you asked. If you want to stay on the Fuji platform and enjoy those signature film simulations and color science, here are some great alternatives. Plus, you'll get the flexibility of interchangeable lenses. You could get an X-T3 used for $600 to $800. You could get an X-T4 used for around $1,000. You could get an XE4 used for around $1,000. You could get an X-T30 used for around $900. Okay, well, maybe you don't want to buy used. go buy an XM5 new for around $900. All of these cameras are more versatile just by virtue of having interchangeable lenses. Fuji alone makes nearly 40 X-mount lenses, and if you count third-party options from Sigma and Tamron, you're looking at over potentially 50 lens choices at your disposal. Let's say you somehow snag a brand new X100VI for $1,600. That same budget could get you a used X-T3 and leave you with at least $800 to spend on lenses. If you were to drop $2,000 for a gray market X100VI, now you've got $1,000 or $1,400 to allocate toward lenses. Bottom line, I could make a very strong case that spending the same amount of money on a more flexible camera system will make you a better photographer faster than locking yourself into a hyped up fixed lens camera. And hey, you don't even have to spend the full difference on gear. Put that extra money toward a vacation, a real-world opportunity to shoot, explore, and grow as a photographer. That is how you get better, not with a status symbol, but with experience. That does it for today's episode. Do you agree with my findings that the X100VI is a terrible camera for beginner photographers? Tell me about it in the comments below. Do you disagree with me? Do you think this is the most amazing camera for beginners? I would love to hear your arguments as to why you think it is. Tell me about that in the comments below. And if you're a fan of this channel, I humbly ask you to click the subscribe button below. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.